Big story out of the Middle East we're following now with some pretty major implications. Several Arab nations have cut diplomatic ties with Qatar over its relationship with Iran and alleged support of Islamic terrorist groups. Bahrain, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Yemen, Libya, and now the Maldives are all taking dramatic steps to virtually isolate the country. Many have already shut down their borders, cutting off land, sea, and air contact with Qatar. Egypt has now given the Qatari ambassador in Cairo 48 hours to leave the country and is ordering its own envoy in Doha to return home. Many of the countries involved are also ordering their citizens out of Qatar and are giving Qataris abroad 14 days to return home. The country itself denouncing the move and denies that it supports militant groups. Kamran Bokhari is my guest, very familiar with the region and the politics at play here. Today we find him in Washington. Okay, so is there any proof here for what these countries are saying?
Is there a need for proof? I think that's the question, Todd. I think that the Saudis got a nod from the Americans to the extent that they didn't want to, have a conflict of interest with Washington. So I think the Saudis are pretty gung ho. Yes, they've given out, the charge sheet, but at the end of the day, if the Saudis are saying that the Qataris are sponsoring terrorist groups, well, similar charges are made against the Saudis. So it's a case of the pot calling the kettle black or vice versa. So, I don't think the issue is evidence here.
We're going to show our viewers a map of the countries that are now joining in to this boycott here, and you really get a sense of Qatar being surrounded, and we want to add the Maldives to that map. So what does it mean? I mean, how much pressure can be brought to bear on the Qataris on this?
Look, this isn't easy for the Qataris, okay? But let's just put this into perspective. Two of the Arab countries, aren't, Yemen isn't a real country. It's a country, wrecked by civil war. Maldives is a small island nation in the Indian Ocean and not even an Arab country. And so what you really have is the Saudis, the Egyptians, and the UAE. Bahrain is so heavily dependent on Saudi Arabia for its well-being. And most noteworthy is that Kuwait is not part of this. Although Kuwait is a key ally of the Saudis, but Kuwait is not part of this effort, at least not to my knowledge.
What do you think this does, bigger picture? I mean, it's quite complex, of course, because there are so many different relationships at play in all of this, as you know, Kamran. But the fight against terrorism, bigger picture, trying to root it out, trying to stop the funding that's going on. Does this help? Does this hinder? What do you think?
I don't see how it helps, Todd. President Trump was in Saudi Arabia like 2 weeks ago or thereabouts, and everything seemed fine. There was the whole thing about forging relationships with the Arabs, trying to contain Iran, and fighting ISIS. How can you fight ISIS, much less contain Iran, when the Arabs and these are both U.S. allies, the Saudis and the Qataris, going at each other like this? This just really speaks to the trend that I've been talking about, called the hollowing out of the Arab world.
Kamran, great to have you on. Thank you for your time today. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.